So, I think it was. I think it was. Hi, I'm Peter Sunrise.
Hi, nice to meet you. My name is Tom.
Thank you very much. I get my cards later.
I'm Sam.
I'm Peter.
With Disney. So.
Hey.
Joe, Peter on
Yeah, how are you guys doing? It's at your booth back there.
Nice.
Unfortunately, I don't think we non-guardian company, they never, customers, but they never.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. So.
Yeah.
That's okay. That's actually good for us.
Well, that was a long room because I don't know how.
We're going to talk about mobile games today. Before I start this panel session, I'd like to give a brief introduction about mobile games, what the market looks like, and where we are going. If you look at mobile games revenues, one thing that is very important to is that revenues coming from Japan are about 6 times more important than the revenues per user in the USA and 12 times higher than in Europe. If we look at the situation in the United States, and we look at that from on the timeline, we see that the United States will become the second largest market, and on the short term, market for mobile games on the long term. Now, what are the main differences between Japan, the Japanese and the Korean markets? We see that Japan and Korea are a subscription-based market, so people are buying games on a subscription basis and download games in a smaller percentage. About 30% of the games are downloaded and 60% are subscription based. If you look at Europe, it's about 90% download and only 10% is subscription based, and that's the iMode carriers in Europe. In the United States, we see something that is not working in Europe and not in Japan and Korea, and that is pay-per-play. Approximately, according to my figures, that is about, let's say, a fifth of total revenues. And the other revenues are coming from downloaded games. So these are a couple of main differences between the Asian markets, Europe and North America. Another thing that we've seen in recent research from Screen Digest in London is that from a publisher point of view, we see a correlation. We see that the top 3 publishers, EA, Gameloft and Glue, are right now responsible for about 18% of the revenues, 18% of the revenues, which is quite substantial. Why is this happening? Why is there such a concentration with big publishers? One reason is that the operators focus on smaller number of higher quality relationships. The other reason is that we see we see a growing consolidation in the market and a lot of M&A activity. So life will be more difficult for smaller publishers. Another thing that recent research has shown is that acquiring IP as a typical publisher's strategy is something that affects the profitability of companies. If we look at profitable publishers, 42% of these profitable publishers are developing their own IP, and 58% are acquiring IP. Out of the publishers that are unprofitable, 96% are acquiring IP, probably for a price that is much too important. So the publishers are under pressure at the moment in the gaming industry for various reasons. Because of the price that they are paying for IP currently, also because the fragmentation of the market. We're going to talk about this in the panel. We see that the ARPU per user is growing, but the games sales are Now, why are the games sales stagnating? Where's the problem? What can we do about it? Is it because of the limited deck space of the operators, or aren't we making the right games? Question to people who are here involved in making mobile games. Or is it a reality? Are only 5% of the people who own a game-enabled handset interested in playing games? The size of our market. Personally, I don't think so. I think that percentage could be 20, 30, 40, or maybe even 50%. So, to start the actual panel discussion right now, I would like to introduce you to our panelists. Peter Annegaard of Sony Ericsson, Mike Ewan of Qualcomm, Joe Morris of Konami, and Stan Liu of Disney, and Taizu San. I would like Peter to start with a short introduction of who he is, what he's doing at Sony Ericsson, and how he sees the future of mobile games, and especially the role of Sony Ericsson.
Thank you very much. Yes, Peter Arnegaard is my name. I'm based in Stockholm, Sweden. I work as a content acquisition manager for games and graphics, which means that I and my team are responsible for all the games and graphics that ends up as preloaded on our global generic phones. Games has always games is probably the most mature content item that we have been working. We had games on Ericsson phones before the Sony Ericsson joint venture, so it's much more mature than like areas like imaging and music. But on the other hand, it has never been maybe the most prioritized area for Sony Ericsson. But there are trends in the company, in the industry, that we see that mobile games have been pretty much unexploited by us. So it's definitely a rising star from Sony Ericsson's perspective to work with in the future.
Thank you. Can you tell us, without breaking any contracts and things like that, how you can imagine a handset in, let's say, 2-3 years from now?
In 2-3 years from now, it's. I actually had a discussion with our CTO recently about this, and just looking at the memory capacity, in two years we will have phones with 64 gigabyte as a capacity. And if you look at the processing power, I mean, today the mobile phone, some of the high-end devices are somewhere between Pentium 2, 300 megahertz something, and the predictions are that in 2-3 years time span we will have a Pentium 3 with 1 gigahertz of processing power. And add to that the components dropping in prices, like GPUs, graphical processor units, which will be able to kind of take care of graphics, and that will also have an immense increase in effect, for example, in application areas such as gaming.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask Stan Liu of Disney to present himself and ask a question: is, are the games that are on the market right now any good? And what kind of games do you think will be possible in the near future?
Thank you. My name is Stan. I work for Disney. I'm under the Disney Interactive Group. I'm sorry, the Disney Internet Group. And under that specific label, we have a label called M Disney, which the primary focus of our group is to bring Disney branded content to the consumer. And that includes mobile games, graphics, ringtones, and such. Whether the games out there are good today, there are some really fantastic games out there today. And there's also a lot of games that are very similar to try to be, you know, those games. There's a lot of kind of like Me Too type of games out there. So with the carrier deck condensing itself, it's harder and harder for a publisher even to get themselves positioned in a prime position on deck and get the product out there. Fortunately, with Disney, we have such a recognizable brand, and we have such a great market, kind of like with market relationship with a family as well as the younger audience. So we have a much better time getting our product on deck than so we're lucky from that perspective. Now with the games that are out there right now, I think there are a lot more room for improvement and for innovations. There aren't any games out there that give you an experience that you can only have on mobile, and I think that's the key here. In order to drive conversion of player from consoles and handheld to mobile, you have to provide them with an experience that is uniquely mobile, and I think that is missing right now. So we're certainly experimenting with a lot of variety of different products like that. And 2 to 3 years from now, I think right now our primary focus it's all about connected media applications. We recently relaunched Disney.com, which is a huge cornerstone within our business. And within the Disney Internet Group, there is the Disney Mobile Studio, which is our MVNO group, and then the VR Studio, which is the group that creates online massive multiplayer games such as Toontown Online and the Pirates multiplayer game that's coming out. And then M-Disney is the content publishing label. And our goal is to make sure that all these divisions are doing products that are cross-platform and connected to take advantage of the populations that we have with the website and the community that we build under the Disney brand. So I think 2 to 3 years from now, we'll see a lot more network-aware games and applications that will give people more reasons to subscribe on a monthly basis. So that's sort of where we're looking at this point.
Thank you very much. So we are going to expect a lot of interesting games coming out of your company in the near future. Speaking of cross-platform multiplayer games, Mike Ewan of Qualcomm has been a very entertaining speaker on many events about cross-platform gaming, multiplayer gaming, and also the technology and the business models behind that. Mike, can you briefly introduce yourself and maybe pick on what have been said just now?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mike Ewan. I head up the gaming group at Qualcomm. The specific division I work for, what we're probably most famous for, if you're not familiar with mobile, is Brew as a platform. And some of the things we're working on right now are just evolve that platform into essentially a service. So that's our key focus for this year and then kind of years moving forward, building a mobile gaming service as opposed to just evolving the underlying technologies that game developers and publishers could build on. In terms of cross-platform, so I've been on the soapbox for this for many years, all the way back to when I first talked about it at GDC Mobile a few years ago. And essentially, I just feel that Stan was kind of commenting about, well, something really unique in terms of a mobile game that's a mobile game on this, a defining game on this platform. I think one of the ways that we can achieve that someday, we hope we have GPS and all these kind of different things that are uniquely mobile, but the reality is I think it'll take some time before that actually becomes mass market. But cross-platform design, from my perspective, that's where, how do you actually design a game? And I know Stan and probably Joe here at Konami are looking at things like this from the content perspective. How do you design a game that truly works between the various platforms? And what I'm talking about here is, you have a console, you have a PC, you have dedicated handhelds, you have online, and you have mobile phones. Right now, what you tend to see a lot of is people just taking the brands or licenses and just putting them on the mobile phones. But there's no true real design. You might have a cheat code unlock or something like that. And I'll give one quick example here. All the rumors of Blizzard posting their mobile posts. They're posting these jobs on their website now, so they're looking for a mobile producer, UI designer, a programmer. So what would WoW do from a cross-platform design perspective? I think you're not necessarily going to put an MMO onto a phone, but there's certainly things that you can do that will complement that experience on the PC. So is that item trading? Is that secondary markets? Is that leveling up or farming gold? Is it playing with your character or doing things like that? I think that's a big trend that hasn't happened yet, and kind of waiting for these guys to try something like that.
Thank you very much. I would like to briefly introduce Taizo-san, who's from Japan, who came here to talk about mobile games. He is president and CEO of Movida and also an advisor to SoftBank. Is living in Japan and has a lot of activities also in Korea. And what I'd like to do is to briefly introduce yourself and maybe answer the question, what can we learn from Japanese and Korean markets? What are the kind of success factors that made this beautiful ARPU number that is 12 times higher than the average in Europe and 6 times higher than here in the US?
Hi, my name is Taizu Song from SoftBank. Firstly, I'd like to introduce SoftBank. And about 25 years ago, SoftBank was founded, and the original business was a distribution business of the PC software. But from 1996, we focused to the internet business, and the first project of the internet business is creating Yahoo Japan. And even now, Yahoo Japan is the most biggest portal site in Japan, and twice bigger than the Google Japan, and we are the #1 auction provider like eBay. So Yahoo Japan is a dominant player of the internet space in Japan. And from year 2002, we started the revolutionary broadband access service called Yahoo BB. And after we started, we launched BB. The average cost of the broadband access is dramatically declined. And nowadays, our main product of Yahoo BB is 15 megabits per second, and the price is about $40 per month, so very cheap and very high speed. So, and just last year, we acquired Vodafone by spending 17 billion US dollars. So it's a very huge burden for us. But we are now expecting that huge possibility of the future of the mobile network. And I am in charge of the contents business development of the SoftBank Group. And I'm thinking, I'm planning the strategy about the fixed mobile conversion. And I'd like to create something new experience in the mobile gaming area. And the reason Japan and Korea, ARPU is very high. I think there are so many aspects, but there are so many reasons. But I think there are four major reasons about the high in both countries. Firstly, Japanese users and the Korean users, Korean people are very crazy about getting new handset, spending a lot of money. So according to the analysis, within 2 years, every users replace the new handset. So in a very couple of years, the environment of the especially client side has totally changed from the older one. So environment of the gaming is very powerful enough compared to other countries. And secondly, originally from the 20 to 30 years ago, Japan's game industry is enough because of the Nintendo or Sony Computer Entertainment. So there are many game developers who is developing for the console game. So it's very easy to export from the console game to mobile game. That's why so huge lineups of the mobile games came to the mobile area. That's why people get crazy about mobile gaming. And thirdly, most of the residents in two countries are living in a city side, for example, Tokyo or Seoul. So their major transportation is train or subway or bus. So, and they spend a long time, and they riding on those transportation a long time. So while they are riding on those transportation, they have to they have to kill time by doing something. So mobile gaming is one of the best solutions for killing time. And in addition to it, it's cultural reason, but especially in Japan, in a train or in a bus, we should keep quiet because of the courtesy. So I can, like in the United States, we cannot talk in a car or train. So we keep quiet. So the email typing or the playing game is a very good behave in public transportation. I think that is one reason for the ARPU. And fourth, not least, historically, Japanese voice ARPU was very high compared to other countries. And actually, voice ARPU is decreasing very quickly now because of the competition. But on the other hand, carriers, Japanese mobile carriers are trying very hard to change the pricing program of the mixing the voice ARPU and data ARPU. So Japanese mobile carriers are have a very smart pricing program regarding the data ARPU and the voice consumption. So I think the total ARPU is not changing. And actually voice ARPU is declining, but total not changing. So that is why the data ARPU is very high, and people are accustomed to pay a lot of money to mobile phone historically. I think that is another major reason of the high ARPU.
Thank you. Joe Morris of Konami is our fifth panelist. He has a very fortunate position now. Everybody has spoken, and he can sort of make a preliminary conclusion. But also, Konami is of course successful in distributing their IPs worldwide, not only in the US, but of course also in Japan. Joe, could you briefly introduce yourself, tell our audience what your role is exactly within Konami and how you see the future? What are the main hurdles in the economy of mobile games?
Okay. My name is Joe Morris, as indicated, and I agree with what the panelists here have said. I think Mike hit on convergence, and Taizo-san hit on convergence a little bit. Stan hit on no good games. That being said, let me just give you a little bit about my background. I'm the Vice President and General Manager for Konami Digital Entertainment. My focus is primarily domestically, although I've got responsibility for North and South America. The revenue stream pretty much is here, and my focus is following the money. That being said, that's the top 4 carriers for us. There's a couple different ways you can look at this business. In Stan's case, or in Disney's case, or in Sony's case, you could be a loss center for the company, but still drive revenue for the company, right? Now, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm saying that Sony did a great job with the Spider-Man 3-screen initiative that they did. The other way to look at this is you could be out there trying to flip your company, and it's all about just getting the equity markets to look at you attractively. We are run from an operating income perspective. So every day when I go into work, I've got to keep the lights on. So that's my perspective that I've got as I further present here. You asked me about the main hurdles. Frankly, for us, it gets to operational excellence. And it also gets to, from a content strategy perspective, it gets to brands. And for us, the titles that do well, that are on the top decks at Singular, Verizon Wireless, T-Mobile, and Sprint are brands. And I've got right here, I'm looking right now at the first screen, no scrolls on all 4 carriers, and I can tell you the one common thread that runs between these 4 carriers and these top sellers, they're all recognizable titles. And that, I think, is also going to lend itself towards the weeding. Unfortunately, some of the smaller publishers. There are a few statistical outliers out there that do well, but primarily it's brands. And to Stan's point, it's not because these brands are great. It's because they're recognizable. So everyone knows Tetris. Unfortunately, when you go to your wireless device, you can't do what you can at Best Buy or online and take that title and look at the box or try that specific product. And if you can trial it, from what we've seen and what I've heard from the carrier side, the revenue stream typically doesn't follow. So there's the world that I'd like to live in, which is where great content is going to sell, no matter what the title is, and folks can get out there and check it out. That's the world I'd like to live in, but the world I live in is essentially launching 1 title per month and massively porting, doing that primarily with brands, and then we're experimenting with some casual titles with some licensing deals that we've done. So hopefully that answers your question.
How do you see the future of mobile games? What kind of gameplay would you like to see happening in 2-3 years from now?
That's a very interesting question, and what we're doing, and I think anybody who sits in a corner office in LA is probably doing the same thing, and my counterparts here have alluded to this, is you're moving to a converged world. So what we're doing is we're going to reorganize along the lines of digital distribution. It's an IP-based world, whether it's a dual screen, whether it's a next-gen console, or it's PC-based, or it's mobile-based. We've got to tie all these things together. So that's where I see this going. So I give an example, quick example. One of our big titles is Winning 11, which is a soccer title, which is very popular in Europe. With that specific title, you've got say a console launch. You could go out with an IP-aware wireless device, and you could say practice your player's skills on that wireless device. So say we get one of those great Qualcomm handsets, and we'd practice our player skills so that the next time we went and played Winning 11, we would be that much better in terms of a player. Now, that all being said, there's the hardcore gamer world, and then there's this broader mobile consumer out there. And I think that as a gaming company, sometimes gaming companies lose sight of that. And again, I'm speaking from a very US-centric perspective here. Our audience is not the hardcore audience. Our audience is, and I think you see this with the success of and I think if anybody turns their back on the Wii who's in this space is making a big mistake. But you look at the Wii. Why has the Wii been successful? I think it's been successful because it appeals to the casual gamer and not just those folks who have 4 or 5 hours a day to spend getting to the next level. So the broader market is the casual, easier to use easier to learn kind of a game market. And that's where we want to move our company. And I think that's where, if you want to survive, I think that's where you need to move your company.
Thank you. Any comments to what has been just said? Peter, would you like to comment?
No, I think it's good that we have kind of stakeholders from the whole mobile gaming ecosystem in this panel. And what I personally see and need for here moving forward is more industry-wide initiatives. There are so many stakeholders and so many different parties want their share of the cake. And if we want a thriving business, we need to speak more with each other over the borders, and that's also over the competition borders, including the handset manufacturers. And we are collaborating on many areas, but I think that we could even have more joint initiatives within this area to actually make it happen.
Can you give an example of a joint initiative that is successful right now?
Within mobile gaming?
Yes.
Well, within mobile gaming it is quite new, but we actually have some early discussions, but unfortunately I can't go into any details of that currently.
So that is a collaboration between handset manufacturers?
Yes, I mean everything from the kind of defining the platform to make it easier for developers and publishers, to counter fragmentation. I mean, we're committed to Java and Symbian from our side, and we just kind of launched a number of phones now with MSA, which is more like an umbrella with different specifically designed JSRs to do that. So they're happening both on the technical and of course also on the business level.
Stan, I'd like to ask you a question. How important do you think this is for the market that handset manufacturers get together and talk about standards and things like that?
That'll be utopia. I mean, we spent a lot of effort porting to just a tremendous amount of handsets. On top of that, we also put in, after the product's launch, put in, again, a tremendous amount of effort to backfill those products. Just, because as a new handset comes out, we want to make sure that product's up there. But it's how this business is, right? It's growing at such a tremendously fast pace. Product cycle are on shelf. The shelf life cycle of product cycles are so short these days. It will be great if you can get everybody to get together, agree on something, but that I just don't see how it's going to happen. So.
Well, he just said it's happening.
Well, yeah, it's a huge area, and I think that we're taking small steps at a time here, and I don't think it's a single stakeholder's fault that the situation is as it is, so to speak. Looking how we solve this problem ourselves to make it as easy as possible for developers targeting our phones. We don't have a specific Java per model. We define a very clear Java strategy with Java platforms. We're currently up to version number 8 of that platform, and for each platform you have a pretty wide range of different models sharing the exact same specifications and JSRs, so any build will actually work on independent on any of these models in the same Java platforms, also with almost 100% full backwards compatibility.
Yeah, actually, let me just jump in here for a second. I was going to say, very supportive of what Peter's saying here, because I think from a broader standpoint, what Stan's saying is absolutely true. So that's the nature of this beast. Like mobile, this is what it is. There is no common standard that everyone's going to achieve, and I just don't know whether even in 10 years we'll have that, where there's just one platform that it's consistent across all. Kind of commoditizes certain people in the value chain today, and whether people are going to let that happen or not. It's no different than you look at video game consoles today. I mean, there is not just one. I mean, there's the Xbox, there's Sony, there's Nintendo. Yeah. It tends to narrow down to a few. Most likely is what's going to happen. But I think I'm supportive of the same concept in terms of Peter is supportive of Symbian in Java. Brew's competitor to that. But I think we certain things like 3D or better form factor in devices. I mean, there are just things that are general concepts within gaming that I think as an industry we want to try and see happen, whether it's cross-platform or fixed mobile convergence or what have you. So I guess my soapbox statement here is just that a lot of people like to say that the business is not going well. It's 5% of downloads, and it's easy to be a pessimist and just say, because you get pressed that way by just saying this business is done, we're not growing, let's go on to the next big thing, which is mobile TV. Music now and advertising and Web 2.0. You can always find something cool, but gaming over time has always proved that it survived. Like you could say the regular game business went through this 10, 15 years ago where people just say, who plays games? They're just a bunch of kids or whatever the stereotypes, and yet the business is huge right now. So, and it hasn't been killed. So I think it's a similar sort of thing. And the last thing I'll say is that, whether you want to call yourself a gamer or not, the fact is gaming is somewhat of an inherent human activity. That's all the way back to whether you played you did hopscotch, or you played checkers, or you played Monopoly. Those are games. So I don't think it's going to go away.
No, I agree. Joe,
Yes, if I could just chime in here very quickly on the UI discussion. I think there's a different answer in Japan and Korea, and there's a different answer domestically, and then there's another answer in Europe. Here, domestically, the market is primarily a postpaid market, and the carriers, and I think rightfully so, have walled gardens, and I can talk to you more about that later for why I think that's a good idea. But if anybody's in InMobile.org, you can read Lowenstein's comments today, and they make a lot of sense, who was the former strategic VP of strategy at Verizon Wireless. But I see, as from a UI perspective, there's going to eventually be a standard. And you know, we work with Motricity, we all work with Qualcomm, we all work with some of the other folks out there. Now, I'm not going to say it up here, but I know Stan knows and I know there's one that makes a lot of sense. And ultimately, the market is going to choose from a business model perspective which system works the best and which one reduces, in this country at least, reduces cost at the carrier and increases margin at the carrier. So at the end of the day, that's going to be the solution. And I'm a bit of an optimistic there. I'm hoping that the carriers will gain control of the UI, and once that occurs, it's going to be a better world for me. Having said that, I think it's a long ways off here domestically. Europe, it's different because you've got OEM. The business model is completely different, and you know, you've got OEM stores there, which you really don't have too many of here, and they certainly don't represent a large percentage of activations out there, and they never will. But anyway, that's my take on the whole situation with UIs.
Jumping back in, I think in many ways we're sort of already there, at least in the United States, domestically speaking. You either develop to Java or Brew, right? The issue where I came from, it's from the handset point of view. You know, you have all these different screen size, heap size, soft key, this. Everybody has their own set of requirement. That's where I'm coming from, right? It'd be great if all the manufacturers can sort of agree on a standard. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. That's all.
What about distribution system right now? You've touched that. What would be the most ideal distribution system for a game? Would that be a PC where you can try a game on a big screen, you can select games, etc., etc.? Or do you think the carriers will continue selling their games on a deck, which is not always an interesting experience? You know, you have a small screen. In many cases you can't try a game. You have a very limited choice. Joe, could you comment to that?
Yeah, we've invested quite a bit of money in that initiative, actually. We've got a try before you buy website, and we're also powering some other folks' back end, enabling SMS play, which is what you're talking about. In this country, unless you could drive eyeballs to your website, it's not going to work. But if you've got folks coming to your website, say you're a Yahoo or an MSN or maybe some sort of a big electronics retailer, maybe a buy.com, and you want to have some content with that phone activation that you're going to do, I think that makes sense. But what we're seeing right now, and we've done deals with, you name it, Jamba, Zingy, on and on and on and on. In this country, the money comes from the decks. That's been our experience. Stan, what have you seen?
Absolutely. Right now, over 90%, 95% of our business is on deck. And of all the stuff there, the top 40 seller up there are all branded content, well-known branded content. So having a well-recognized brand, it's absolutely paramount.
Taizo-san, can you comment to this? Can you tell us something about the distribution system in Japan? How that works?
Especially in Japan, maybe from the fourth quarter of this year, 3 carriers, Docomo and au and SoftBank, start launching HSDPA 3.5G. So 5 minutes per second mobile broadband network will start. So of course we can easily distribute through over the air, and then not only that, in Japan, Japan is compared to the other countries very small land, so we can cover the whole country wireless network using very compare less, for example, Wi-Fi hotspot or WiMAX network with a small capital investment. So I think those Wi-Fi or WiMAX is much broader than the 3.5G. So, and fixed line also 50 or 100 megabits, and average house uses at least over 50 megabits or 100 megabits. So in Japan and Korea, the infrastructure is very powerful. So we can easily distribute through the network online. But if we think the future of the mobile, the Qualcomm or Sony Ericsson provides a very powerful handset in the future, very near future. So it's like a console or PC. So similar performance they can play. So I think the file size of data size of the contents, game titles, will become very bigger, like existing console title. So for 100 megabytes or gigabytes title, we cannot distribute through the over air, even though the Wi-Fi or WiMAX. So I think this is just in my opinion, but for example, micro SD card is one of the potentially very good solution for the distribution as a package distribution. And when it comes to the SoftBank, SoftBank's original business is distribution, package distribution business. So we have a strong distribution network in Japan. So we can easily distribute those kind of package. So I think those kind of combination is one of the future of the distribution, content distribution network, I think.
Thank you very much. So we've touched at many different aspects of mobile gaming. We looked at handsets, we looked at fragmentation, we looked at distribution problems, we looked at also at all these beautiful games that are going to come out in the near future. So before we're going to say keep on playing, we would like to know if there are any questions that you would like to put to the panel. Yes. Is there a microphone for?
Hi. My name is Efrain Rodriguez, and I represent a group of companies and TV business in Central America. One of our companies is the licensee of Disney. It distributes the DVD for the whole Central American region, including 6 countries. And we made a lot of promotions with the carrier. So you buy this phone and you get the Pirates of the Caribbean 3 DVD for free. In the past few months, they have been requesting us, why don't you get the game for the cell phone? It would be great to make the promotion with the DVD and the game. And what about the wallpaper, the screensaver? And that issue, we have been thinking about, well, we are a third party. Usually the phone factory, Nokia or Sony, will look for Disney directly to get the games. But in our case, when you find a lot of countries outside, maybe, I don't know, in your strategic planning of distribution of gaming, do you have like a plan for distribution for third parties, like licensing? How about that? And I would like to know the position of Sony as the phone company and the mobile content owner?
Well, on the international side, we actually have a whole separate division that handles all the distribution and content licensing there. So it would be, it's probably not in my best place to speak on how they plan to distribute and take care of distribution from that aspect. But we are in over 30 countries, and we have people on these countries that, so certainly it's internationally speaking, it's a huge market for us. So, but it's not just in my place to speak to that.
But these operations are yours, or
Yes.
you make partnership with local business? It's yours.
Yes, we actually have international office and across the world. So.
Okay. Is that the same case of Konami?
Well, for me personally, as I'd mentioned earlier, I've got profit and loss for both North and South America personally, so this does fall under my purview. We've distributed directly through Vivo and through Telcel. Just typically what we do, because of the porting costs, and again, I'm very focused on cost and making sure my margins are healthy. If we sell it domestically here, we'll sell it somewhere else. Now, if someone can give me a business model and show me that I can make money, in another market, and I'm not going in and losing money, I would definitely do it. We do have agents we also work with in South and Central America and some of the smaller countries. I'm not sure where you're from or who you're with. Who are you with?
You mean country or?
Which operator?
In Salvador, there's 4 operators. It's called Digicel. I don't know if you know that carrier. Claro. China Telecom has bought the biggest operation there, and Telefónica, Movistar.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we've got deals with Telefonica. Do me a favor, when this is over with, just stop by and we can exchange cards, and I can make sure someone gets in contact with you.
That would be great. Thank you.
Are there any more questions?
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Ron Bush with Zytec Systems. In regards to gaming, something I noticed, especially with some of my cousins and such that do a lot of gaming by their cell phone, when they download a game or even like a ringtone or music, if they lose their cell phone, they lose all of their media. Do you see a time when people would be able to keep an online account of what they've purchased? So if they change phones or anything along this line, that they'd be able to, keep that content and continue to buy more media from you?
That's a question for Sony Ericsson, I think.
Yeah, we actually solved that on the UIQ platform already, especially in the distribution channels that we control ourselves, the Sony Ericsson application shop. You have an account there, and we know what type of content you actually have purchased for previous devices. So whether you upgrade or you lose your phone, you get a new one, you're able to get those for free. However, on the non-UIQ phones, on the mass market phones, on our own channels, we have removed the kind of the login towards the to the distribution channels that we have, because that was a hurdle for consumers to actually purchase content. We wanted to remove all the kind of login requirements to get them to get them as close to the content as possible. But that was the kind of penalty that we kind of lost track who purchased what. But I agree with you, especially in some markets where people tend to kind of upgrade their phones or swap phones quite recently, and we see that the applications and not only games are getting so much more complex and advanced, so you want to keep them, and they also kind of generate user-generated data, and you want to be able to emigrate that data, of course, to as well.
Yeah, I was going to add, so at least relative to our own platform, Brew, as well, we can do that as well. So, because obviously phones, there's a limited amount of memory on there. So if you're new to this space, you wonder, like, well, what happens when I buy something there's no more space? So same thing with us. Like, we can essentially, if you purchase an application and then you run out of space, you can disable an application and then free up space, and then basically you still own it. So if you want to download it again, you'll bring down. You just have to move something off the phone. think the bigger issue of kind of having some sort of common license vault or something like that, if it's kind of pure content like wallpaper, ringtones, depending on the format of that content, that's a little easier. But when you get to an actual game, because of screen sizes and, is this a higher end phone or mid-tier phone? Is it a phone that's 3 years old now? And then, do you really, there's business issues there that haven't been resolved, I think, with all the operators. Because the big thing right now, like if you download a game or download an application, most operators will force you to buy it again if you switch phones. They don't really say, well, you bought a license for $10 or $5, and for here on out, no matter what phone you have on our network, you can own it. So I think that's kind of a broader issue from a business standpoint. And then when you start crossing over into other platforms, that hasn't been resolved either. But then there's the bigger issue of, well, if this game, if there's some connectivity or connection between your mobile phone and an Xbox PC, I mean, then you have to start thinking about, well, did I buy the license to this game on a PC first? So do I get a discounted rate because I'm going to get the same thing on my phone, or do I have to buy it every time? And that's right now, the latter is what you do now. You have to buy it every single time.
Last question. Yes.
I don't think I need a microphone. This is for Joe. So in the U.S., I represent, we're Clear Sky Mobile Media. We have about 20 tier 2 and tier 3, maybe even tier 4 years. So the total aggregate of our subscribers is about, maybe 1.5 million over those 20 or 30 carriers, and they all want games. They all want brand games, and we're the only ones that really supply it. We supply them the WAP gateway, the MMS, and all the content on their deck. But I think that I would have a hard time getting attention from you if I wanted those games. So what is the threshold as far as carrier counts? I mean, you talk about profit loss. Is it 5 million subscribers? You don't talk to anybody under that. Is there a threshold for that?
The way I look at this is every month I've got what I call a cultivate and harvest meeting, and I look at all of my products, and I also look at all of my distribution channels. And if my products or distribution channels are not profitable, I make a decision to maybe wait and see, because some of these MVNOs particularly, you just don't know how it's going to go. But again, at the end of the day, I'm accountable for numbers on the bottom right-hand side of that Excel spreadsheet. So I can't give you a specific answer. We don't really look at it from a number of subscribers perspective. For instance, some carriers over-index. T-Mobile is a classic example. They very, very clearly over-index relative to their size. And then some carriers just do really, really well because they've got great infrastructures. The Brew infrastructure is absolutely wonderful infrastructure. That's your free commercial. You owe me now. And then other carriers, you've got problems where you've got a customer who would order a game and the transaction doesn't go through, or there's revenue leakage. So at the end of the day, I've got to make money. But again, why don't you and I talk after this, and we'll see if we can't work something out. You bet.
There's one question on the screen for Stan. It's a commercial question. Stan, do you handle porting backfill in-house, or do you use a third party such as Tyro Wireless?
We do both. We absolutely do both, yeah. So.
Okay. So that was it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please stay in your seats. We are going to go right into the focus group, which is a lot of fun. We have 11 consumers. We usually have more people come because half don't show up, but everybody showed up today. But it's a great group of real consumers who are going to tell you their opinions about mobile phones and services. So we're going to ask our focus group to come up, and thank you to our panelists. one of you gentlemen bring a chair on this? Can you bring? One of you gentlemen bring a chair for this side? Once you pull your chair out, then sit back in and see how many we do.